It began with a routine staff review inside Buckingham Palace. At least, that's what officials wanted everyone to believe. But when senior aides suddenly vanished into an emergency meeting, and King Charles canceled part of his schedule, palace insiders knew something extraordinary had happened. A secret had surfaced, and according to whispers spreading through royal corridors, it pointed directly toward Queen Camilla. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. At first, there was nothing that seemed unusual about the review itself. Internal administrative assessments happen regularly within the royal household, often passing without attracting attention from anyone beyond a small circle of officials. Yet this particular review quickly became different. According to palace whispers, staff members examining routine records stumbled across information that immediately raised concerns among senior administrators. What they found has never been publicly disclosed, but reports suggest the discovery was serious enough to trigger a chain of events that unfolded with remarkable speed. Within hours, messages were reportedly sent to some of the king's most trusted advisors, and discussions that had begun as ordinary administrative conversations suddenly took on a far more urgent tone. The atmosphere inside the palace changed almost overnight. Those who worked within the royal household allegedly noticed that familiar routines began quietly shifting. Meetings were rearranged. Schedules were adjusted. Conversations stopped abruptly whenever certain names were mentioned. While officials maintained complete silence, the tension became impossible for insiders to ignore. Something significant had emerged from that review, and the people responsible for protecting the monarchy appeared determined to contain it before it spread any further. As concern grew, senior aides reportedly moved quickly to alert King Charles. Sources claim detailed briefings were prepared and delivered directly to the monarch, bypassing many of the usual layers of palace administration. Such urgency immediately fueled speculation. After all, routine administrative matters rarely require direct royal intervention. Yet this situation seemed different. The king, already carrying the immense weight of leadership during a challenging period for the monarchy, suddenly found himself facing questions that demanded immediate answers. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla reportedly remained unaware of the storm gathering around her. While discussions intensified behind closed doors, insiders suggest that attention remained focused on evaluating what had been uncovered and determining its potential consequences. Every new conversation seemed to create more questions than answers. Every answer appeared to lead toward another troubling possibility. What had begun as a routine review was rapidly becoming something much larger. Soon, emergency meetings were reportedly taking place throughout the palace. Advisors came and went. Senior figures exchanged confidential reports. Those on the outside could only speculate, but rumors spread quickly among royal circles. Some claimed the issue involved influence. Others whispered about decisions made years earlier that were only now coming under scrutiny. Whatever the truth might be, one thing became increasingly clear. This was not an isolated matter. The concern reaching the king's desk appeared to have roots extending deep into the past, touching relationships, decisions, and loyalties that had remained hidden for years. But what staff allegedly discovered was not a recent mistake. It was connected to decisions made quietly over several years. The deeper officials looked, the more complicated the story became. What initially appeared to be a harmless arrangement soon revealed layers of connections, favors, and private influence that few people outside the palace had ever noticed. What made the discovery so unsettling was not the possibility of a single questionable decision, but the growing realization that it may have been part of a much larger pattern. As senior officials continued examining records and internal communications, attention reportedly shifted toward the network of relationships that had quietly developed around Queen Camilla over the years. None of it seemed alarming when viewed in isolation. A recommendation here, an introduction there. A trusted associate receiving access to opportunities unavailable to others. Individually, each decision appeared ordinary. Together, however, they began forming a picture that some insiders found increasingly difficult to ignore. For years, Camilla had worked to establish her place within the institution. After decades of scrutiny, criticism, and public debate, she had finally achieved a position of acceptance that once seemed impossible. Yet according to palace whispers, that growing influence may have created an environment where personal loyalties became deeply intertwined with royal responsibilities. Reports suggest that certain individuals within her circle benefited from unusually close access to important discussions, events, and opportunities. Whether those advantages were intentional or simply the result of long-standing relationships remains unclear, but questions were beginning to emerge that could no longer be easily dismissed. As officials examined the situation more closely, staff members reportedly started identifying patterns they had previously overlooked. Certain appointments appeared to follow familiar recommendations. Access to influential figures seemed to be granted through similar channels. Names that had once appeared unrelated suddenly surfaced repeatedly throughout internal records. The deeper investigators looked, the more connections they allegedly uncovered. What had started as curiosity slowly evolved into concern, and concern gradually became something far more serious. At the heart of the growing tension was an old struggle that had existed within royal circles for years. Traditional advisors, many of whom dedicated their careers to preserving protocol and protecting the institution, were said to have long viewed certain members of Camilla's inner circle with caution. While they rarely challenged her publicly, insiders claimed disagreements frequently emerged behind closed doors. Some believed the monarchy should remain guided strictly by tradition and established procedure. Others favored a more flexible approach built on personal trust and modern relationships. Those competing visions had existed quietly for years, but now they appeared to be colliding in a way nobody could ignore. Meanwhile, detailed reports were reportedly making their way to King Charles with increasing frequency. Each briefing brought new questions. Each answer seemed to reveal another layer beneath the surface. The king, already balancing immense personal and constitutional pressures, found himself confronting a situation that grew more complex with every passing day. What worried advisors most was not necessarily what had happened in the past, but what those revelations might mean for the future. Because if influence had quietly reshaped decisions before, how many other questions remained unanswered? And if loyalties were being tested now, where would those loyalties ultimately lead when the pressure became impossible to contain? As reports accumulated on the king's desk, the issue transformed from palace gossip into a matter that could affect the monarchy itself. Those present reportedly described the king's reaction as one of stunned silence. After years of balancing duty, family, and loyalty, Charles was suddenly forced to confront information he never expected to hear about someone standing at the very center of his world. By the time the reports reached him, the atmosphere surrounding the issue had already changed dramatically. What had started as a quiet internal concern was now being discussed with a level of seriousness that few palace matters ever achieve. According to insiders, King Charles was presented with a comprehensive briefing compiled from weeks of reviews, observations, and internal assessments. Every detail was carefully organized. Every concern was documented. Yet those who allegedly attended the discussions claim it was not a single revelation that carried the greatest impact. It was the cumulative weight of everything placed before him. Piece by piece, a picture emerged that forced the king to confront questions he had never imagined would land on his desk. For Charles, the situation was deeply personal. This was not merely an administrative issue or a matter of palace management. At the center of the growing controversy stood Queen Camilla, the woman who had remained by his side through years of public scrutiny, private struggles, and historic transformation. Their relationship had survived storms that many believed impossible to overcome. Together they had endured criticism, uncertainty, and immense pressure. That history made the situation all the more painful, because now the king faced a dilemma that struck directly at the heart of his responsibilities. Was his first obligation to the woman he loved, or to the institution he had spent his entire life preparing to serve? As advisors continued presenting their findings, opinions reportedly began to divide. Some argued that the concerns being raised were significant enough to require immediate action. Others urged caution, warning that appearances could sometimes be misleading and that conclusions drawn too quickly might create unnecessary damage. The discussions became increasingly intense. Every perspective carried consequences. Every recommendation seemed to lead toward a different risk. While some feared the possibility of internal misconduct, others worried about something equally dangerous: the perception of misconduct. In an institution built upon trust, perception can become as powerful as reality. That concern soon expanded beyond palace walls. Advisors reportedly warned the king that if details of the controversy became public, the fallout could be substantial. The monarchy had already endured years of challenges, controversies, and public scrutiny. Another crisis, particularly one involving someone so closely connected to the crown, had the potential to reignite difficult questions about accountability, privilege, and influence. The possibility of public backlash hung over every discussion like a gathering storm. Suddenly, This was no longer only about internal relationships. It was about protecting the stability of the institution itself. As the pressure mounted, Charles reportedly withdrew from the constant flow of meetings and briefings. Those close to the situation claim he spent significant time reflecting on the information placed before him. The king understood better than anyone that every decision carries consequences. A decision to act could create personal pain and public controversy. A decision not to act could invite accusations of weakness or favoritism. Neither path offered an easy escape. The burden of responsibility grew heavier with every passing day, and the silence surrounding the issue only made the uncertainty more intense. Yet beneath the debates, reports, and private deliberations, a deeper realization was beginning to take shape. The questions confronting the king were becoming impossible to avoid. The evidence continued to accumulate. The concerns refused to disappear. And as the weight of duty slowly overtook the comfort of loyalty, Charles found himself approaching crossroads that would ultimately define how this entire crisis would unfold. Yet the question facing the king was no longer whether action was necessary. It was how far he was willing to go. For generations, royal privileges represented trust, status, and influence. Now, according to palace whispers, some of those privileges were being placed under unprecedented scrutiny, and Camilla found herself at the center of the review. As King Charles continued weighing the information presented to him, discussions inside the palace reportedly entered a new and far more consequential phase. The focus was no longer solely on what had happened in the past. Attention began shifting toward what could happen next. Advisors were said to be examining every aspect of royal responsibility connected to Camilla's position, asking difficult questions that would have been almost unthinkable only months earlier. What duties should remain unchanged? What access should continue? And perhaps most importantly, what level of influence should accompany those responsibilities going forward? These were not simple administrative matters. They touched the very structure of royal life, where privilege and duty have always existed side by side. According to insiders, ceremonial roles quickly became one of the primary areas of discussion. For decades, public appearances, patronages, official representation, and access to key events had been viewed as symbols of trust within the institution. Yet now those same privileges were reportedly being examined through an entirely different lens. Advisors allegedly questioned whether certain responsibilities still reflected the balance the monarchy wished to project. The conversations were sensitive. Every recommendation carried potential consequences. Every possible change risked creating headlines that could shake public confidence. At the same time, concerns surrounding access and influence reportedly intensified. Palace officials are said to have reviewed who attended certain meetings, who received invitations to significant gatherings, and who held influence behind closed doors. While none of these reviews automatically implied wrongdoing, they revealed a growing determination to understand how relationships and authority intersected within the royal household. What once seemed routine was now being studied with extraordinary attention. And as more questions surfaced, the pressure surrounding the review only increased. The process soon exposed a widening divide inside the palace itself. Supporters of Camilla reportedly argued that she had spent years earning her place within the monarchy, and that any effort to reduce her role would be both unfair and damaging. They pointed to her loyalty, her public service, and her ability to support Charles during some of the most challenging periods of his life. To them, the scrutiny felt excessive. It felt personal. It felt like an attempt to rewrite years of dedication. Yet critics saw the situation differently. They argued that protecting the institution sometimes required difficult decisions, regardless of personal relationships. According to palace whispers, some believed the review presented an opportunity to reinforce traditional boundaries and re-establish clearer lines of authority. They viewed the controversy not as a personal dispute, but as a test of accountability. That disagreement created tension that spread through every level of the royal household. Quiet conversations became passionate debates. Long-standing alliances were tested. Trusted colleagues found themselves on opposite sides of an increasingly emotional issue. Meanwhile, Charles remained trapped at the center of it all. The weight on his shoulders reportedly grew heavier with each passing day. Advisors continued presenting options. Supporters and critics continued making their cases. Public exposure remained a constant threat hanging over every discussion. The king understood that whatever decision emerged would inevitably affect both the people closest to him and the institution he had sworn to protect. The room for compromise was shrinking. The pressure was building. And as the arguments intensified, it became clear that a moment of reckoning was approaching faster than anyone expected. Then came the decision that would send shockwave through every corner of the palace. When the order was finally delivered, even longtime palace veterans were reportedly stunned. Few expected King Charles to act so decisively, and fewer still expected the consequences to reach so deeply into Camilla's royal standing. For weeks, advisors had debated possibilities, reviewed recommendations, and weighed risks. Yet, despite all the speculation surrounding the growing controversy, many insiders reportedly believed the king would ultimately choose a cautious path. Charles had built much of his public reputation on patience, restraint, and compromise. Throughout decades of personal and public challenges, he had often preferred careful balance over dramatic confrontation. That is precisely why the decision, when it finally arrived, reportedly caught so many people off guard. According to palace whispers, the king authorized a series of significant changes that immediately altered the trajectory of the crisis and sent a clear message throughout the royal household. The exact details of those changes remain the subject of intense speculation, but insiders claim certain privileges associated with Camilla's position were suddenly placed under new restrictions. Discussions that had once centered on theoretical possibilities became immediate reality. Access was reviewed. Responsibilities were reassessed. Long-standing assumptions were challenged. What made the situation particularly striking was the speed with which officials allegedly moved once the decision had been finalized. For months, uncertainty had dominated the conversation. Now action had replaced hesitation. Reports suggest palace staff were quickly tasked with implementing directives that few had expected to receive. Administrative teams reportedly found themselves navigating an evolving situation where procedures had to be adjusted and responsibilities clarified. The atmosphere became increasingly intense as employees attempted to understand what the changes meant, both in practice and in symbolism. Within royal institutions, symbolism often carries enormous weight. Even the smallest adjustment can signal a much larger shift beneath the surface. That reality was not lost on anyone involved. As word of the king's decision quietly spread through royal circles, reactions reportedly varied dramatically. Some insiders expressed relief, believing decisive leadership had finally brought clarity to an increasingly troubling situation. Others were said to be shocked by both the scope and timing of the move. For those who had spent years watching Camilla secure her place within the monarchy, the development felt almost unimaginable. She had endured public criticism, survived political storms, and eventually reached a position once considered impossible. Now questions were emerging about whether that hard-won stability was beginning to unravel. Outside palace walls, concerns surrounding public perception intensified. Advisors reportedly understood that if details of the internal changes became widely known, every decision would be dissected and debated. The monarchy relies heavily on public confidence, and any suggestion of conflict within its highest ranks carries significant risk. Some feared that revelations could reignite old controversies. Others worried that silence might create even greater speculation. Either way, the pressure continued mounting. Soon, rumors began escaping the confines of royal corridors. Journalists, commentators, and royal watchers allegedly picked up fragments of information, each piece adding fuel to an already growing fire. Speculation spread rapidly. Every unanswered question created 3 new theories. Every denial to spark fresh curiosity. The story was no longer confined to internal briefings and private discussions. It was becoming something much larger, something impossible to fully contain. Yet amid the growing headlines, whispered debates, and institutional upheaval, the deepest impact of the king's decision had not yet been fully felt. Because while advisors focused on implementation and observers focused on consequences, another battle was quietly unfolding behind closed doors. And for the person standing at the center of it all, the struggle was becoming profoundly personal. But while the palace adjusted to the new reality, Camilla herself was facing a far more personal reckoning. Behind palace doors, the woman who had spent decades fighting for acceptance suddenly found herself confronting the possibility that everything she had built could be slipping away. For much of her adult life, Camilla had existed under the weight of extraordinary scrutiny. Long before she became queen, she had endured years of criticism, public judgment, and relentless attention. Her journey into the heart of the monarchy was neither simple nor guaranteed. It required patience, resilience, and an ability to survive storms that might have overwhelmed someone else. That history is what made the current crisis so emotionally devastating. According to palace whispers, The developments unfolding around her came as a profound shock. After years spent securing her place within the institution, she reportedly found herself facing a reality she never expected to encounter. Insiders claim the impact was not merely professional, it was deeply personal. Royal privileges carry practical significance, but they also represent something more powerful: trust, standing, and recognition. For someone who had spent decades attempting to earn acceptance, even the suggestion that those privileges could be reconsidered was said to be profoundly painful. Reports suggest Camilla struggled to understand how circumstances had changed so dramatically in such a short period of time. One moment she stood among the most influential figures in royal life. The next, questions surrounded her future role, her authority, and the position she had worked so hard to secure. As uncertainty spread, concerns reportedly began growing about what the future might hold. No clear roadmap existed. No obvious resolution appeared on the horizon. Every day seemed to bring fresh rumors, new speculation, and additional questions. Those closest to the situation allegedly understood that the controversy had evolved beyond a temporary challenge. It had become a defining moment, one capable of reshaping perceptions for years to come. The lack of certainty may have been the hardest burden of all. People can fight known battles. It is far more difficult to confront battles whose outcome remains hidden in the shadows. At the same time, relationships throughout the royal household reportedly became increasingly strained. Individuals who had once worked comfortably alongside one another suddenly found themselves navigating an atmosphere filled with tension and caution. Conversations carried greater significance. Decisions were examined more carefully. Long-standing alliances appeared less certain than before. According to insiders, the controversy forced many people to reveal where their loyalties truly lay. Some remained firmly supportive of Camilla, arguing that years of service should not be overshadowed by a single period of controversy. Others believed the institution itself had to remain the priority regardless of personal feelings. Supporters reportedly rallied around her during this difficult period. Friends, allies, and trusted confidants were said to offer encouragement as speculation intensified. Yet even their support could not erase the growing sense of uncertainty surrounding the situation. Every expression of loyalty was met by another wave of questions. Every attempt to restore confidence seemed challenged by new rumors emerging from within royal circles. The emotional toll continued growing heavier. What made the situation particularly painful was the contrast between past triumph and present doubt. After spending years climbing toward acceptance, Camilla now faced the possibility of watching influence slowly slip beyond her reach. The very institution she had worked so hard to become part of appeared to be entering a period of transformation, and nobody could say with confidence where that transformation would ultimately lead. As the crisis deepened, it became increasingly clear that the story had expanded beyond any single individual. The stakes were becoming larger, the consequences were becoming broader, and the struggle unfolding inside the palace was beginning to raise questions that reached far beyond Camilla herself. Yet this was no longer only about Camilla. It had become a battle over the future direction of the monarchy itself. As one royal figure appeared to lose ground, others quietly gained influence. What emerged was a dramatic shift in the balance of power that many insiders claim had been building for years. While public attention remained fixed on the controversy surrounding Camilla, a quieter transformation was reportedly taking place inside the monarchy itself. According to palace whispers, the crisis accelerated developments that had been unfolding behind the scenes for a long time. Power within royal institutions rarely changes overnight. It shifts gradually, often unnoticed until a defining moment suddenly reveals what has been happening all along. For many observers, this appeared to be one of those moments. As uncertainty surrounded one part of the royal household, confidence and authority seemed to be consolidating elsewhere. At the center of that shift stood Prince William. For years, he had been preparing for the responsibilities that would one day accompany the throne. Yet insiders claim recent events elevated his influence in ways that extended beyond traditional expectations. Advisors reportedly began relying more heavily on his judgment. Discussions concerning the future direction of the monarchy increasingly included his perspective. What once felt like preparation for a distant future now seemed much closer to the present. As the institution navigated one of its most sensitive internal challenges, William emerged as a figure associated with stability, continuity, and long-term planning. Alongside him, Catherine's prominence reportedly continued growing. Throughout years of public service, she had carefully built a reputation centered on discipline, restraint, and dedication. those qualities suddenly carried even greater significance. According to insiders, many within royal circles viewed her as an important symbol of consistency during a period of uncertainty. Her influence was not necessarily loud or dramatic. Instead, it appeared through trust, credibility, and an ability to remain steady while others faced mounting pressure. In moments of instability, those qualities often become more valuable than authority alone. Elsewhere within the royal household, senior figures were reportedly reassessing their own positions. Long-standing relationships evolved, alliances adjusted. Individuals who had previously remained on the sidelines found themselves playing larger roles in discussions about the institution's future. Some moved closer to William and Catherine. Others focused on supporting King Charles as he navigated an increasingly difficult landscape. The result was a subtle but undeniable repositioning throughout the monarchy. Every decision carried implications not only for the present crisis, but also for the years ahead. At the heart of these conversations was an issue larger than any individual controversy: succession and legacy. Palace insiders claim growing attention was being devoted to what kind of monarchy would emerge in the future. Questions about leadership, public trust, and institutional resilience suddenly felt more urgent than ever. The controversy had exposed vulnerabilities, but it had also highlighted opportunities. Many believed this was a chance to strengthen the crown for the next generation. Others feared that mistakes made during this period could leave lasting scars. Public confidence became a central concern throughout every discussion. The monarchy's strength has always depended on more than titles and ceremonies. It depends upon belief, trust, stability. Advisors reportedly understood that every action would be judged not only within palace walls, but by millions watching from outside. That reality influenced every decision being made. Meanwhile, King Charles remained focused on preserving unity. Despite the divisions, tensions, and uncertainty surrounding him, reports suggest his primary goal was preventing the institution from fracturing under pressure. Yet even as efforts continued to restore stability, one unavoidable reality remained. The monarchy emerging from this crisis would not be identical to the one that entered it. New figures were rising, new priorities were taking shape, and beneath the surface, the future was already beginning to reveal itself. And as the dust began to settle, one final question remained unanswered. In the end, this story was never just about privileges, titles, or palace politics. It was about what King Charles believed the monarchy should stand for, and the difficult choices required to protect that vision. As the controversy slowly moved toward its conclusion, a deeper truth began emerging from beneath the headlines, rumors, and private conflicts. The real significance of what had happened was not measured by which privileges were reviewed or which responsibilities changed hands. It was measured by what the crisis revealed about leadership itself. For King Charles, this had become a defining test. Throughout his life, he had often found himself balancing competing obligations, navigating the complex space where personal loyalty intersects with public duty. Yet few challenges carried the emotional weight of this one. According to palace whispers, he was forced to confront one of the most painful realities any monarch can face: the understanding that protecting the institution sometimes requires decisions that come at a personal cost. That burden reportedly shaped every step of the process. The controversy was never simply about rules or procedures. It was about trust. It was about accountability. Most importantly, it was about preserving confidence in an institution that has survived for generations because it continually adapts while remaining anchored to its core principles. Insiders claim Charles understood that public faith in the monarchy could not be taken for granted. In an era of constant scrutiny, every action is examined, every decision questioned, and every perceived inconsistency amplified. The challenge before him was not merely resolving an internal dispute. It was demonstrating that the crown remained larger than any single individual. For Camilla, the consequences of the crisis may continue long after the immediate controversy fades. Whether the reported changes ultimately prove temporary or permanent, the events surrounding them have already altered perceptions. Years of hard-earned acceptance now exist alongside renewed questions about influence, authority, and responsibility. That contrast may become one of the defining aspects of her royal legacy. After spending decades fighting to secure her place within the institution, she now faces the difficult task of navigating a future shaped by uncertainty. The journey that once seemed complete has unexpectedly entered a new and challenging chapter. Meanwhile, the monarchy itself appears to have emerged transformed. Prince William's growing role, Catherine's increasing influence, and the repositioning of senior royal figures all point toward a future that may look different from the recent past. According to insiders, discussions about succession, stability, and modernization have gained renewed urgency. The institution is preparing not only for the challenges of today, but also for those waiting just beyond the horizon. Every crisis leaves a mark. Some weaken institutions, others force them to evolve. The coming years will determine which path this moment ultimately represents. Yet despite all the uncertainty, one theme has remained constant throughout the story: duty. Again and again, that principle has surfaced at the center of every difficult choice, every painful conversation, and every pivotal decision. It is the force that has shaped monarchs, heirs, advisors, and royal households across generations. And according to those closest to the unfolding drama, it remains the principle guiding the crown as it moves forward. The controversy may eventually fade from public discussion. New headlines will emerge. New challenges will demand attention. But the questions raised during this period will continue echoing through the corridors of royal history. They will influence future decisions, future relationships, and future leaders. Because moments like these are rarely forgotten. They become part of the institution's story, shaping its direction long after the immediate conflict has passed. Because in the House of Windsor, privileges can be granted, influence can be lost, but legacy, once challenged, has a way of reshaping everything that follows. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.